Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Mike with SmartOptionTrading.com. Thanks for joining me on this Saturday early morning on the West Coast, noon here on the East Coast. And today I've come on and I wanted to do a learning experience for you guys. And I wanted to talk to you guys about volume setups and options. And really, this is designed today more for intraday trading, and that's not that this doesn't work for long-term trading, for swing trades. But right now, in the way this market's trading, I'm trying to show you ways to put money in your pocket. And that's what I've been focusing on doing every day for the last 2 weeks. If you want to get a hold of me, Mike at smartoptiontrading.com is my email. You can go to my website, smartoptiontrading.com, on Twitter at optionsmike. I post lots of stuff on there, lots of ideas and charts, and on YouTube at youtube.com/optionsmike. Please follow me along. Risk disclaimer: day trading, short-term trading, options trading, and futures trading are extremely risky undertakings. They generally are not appropriate for someone with limited capital, little or no trading experience, and a low tolerance for risk. Never execute a trade unless you can afford to and are prepared to lose your entire investment. All trading operations involve serious risk, and you can lose your entire investment. No trades are recommendations or advice, and we cannot be sued for losses of capital. All trades are for educational purposes only. Contact your broker or RA for execution margin and other capital requirements. Everyone watching this presentation adheres to all disclaimers from smartoptiontrading.com and me, myself, Mike Pisani. All right, that's out of the way. Let's get on to the good stuff. So I want to go over the overall markets with you quickly, and then I'm going to talk to each of you about volume setups and option flow, and why all three of those really help me determine what I'm trading on a daily basis, what I'm looking for. And really, when all three come together, it really just provides a very high probability trade. So overall markets, right? You need to know what kind of market you're in before you take a trade. And I always say that if you don't know what type of market you're in, you shouldn't be trading, right? You should sit on your hands and figure out what you want to do. So since October, we've just been in this bull market that just up, won't stop, doesn't want to dip. The pullbacks up until this week have been 2 days at the most, right? And if you think about it, no matter what bad news was thrown at this market since October, it just kind of shrugged it off. You get Iran attacks Saudi Arabia, no big deal. Impeachment, market really didn't care about impeachment process, right? I mean, just no reaction to any of it. We assassinate an Iranian general, market's like, not a big deal. Iran attacks us back, market shrugs it off, comes ripping back. And one by one, everything that was on that wall of worry kind of melted away. The trade deal got done. Nobody said that was going to get done. The Fed delivered. Brexit is over with finally. The yield inversion disappeared. North Korea, after threats, all this has just kind of gone away and slowly slid into the past here. And nobody seems to be worried about it here at this point. So when you look at this set up a perfect storm. Since the breakout at 302.50 on the SPY, it's just been a market that keeps moving up, not giving easy entrances into things. And one of the other problems was they kept playing the same names, right? Whether it was AMD, Apple, Microsoft, Google, there's very select names that this market liked to play, and they kept coming and pushing them higher, higher, and higher, no matter how high they went. And this kept going on until last week. And last week, the market started to flash, to me, what I considered some big old warning signs. And I've started to talk to my subscribers. And even on Twitter, on my public Twitter, I was saying it. You had, markets closing on highs and gapping down the other direction next day, or closing on the lows and gapping up. You started to get from a market that wasn't acting technically very good. It was getting very choppy. You had that kind of blow off top. Sometimes you kind of look at this pattern, it kind of reminds you a little bit of January 2018. And I'm not, by the way, calling for the 20-something% correction, that big sell-off or anything like that. I'm just saying it kind of feels similar. And yesterday we came to just above the 50-day, and we stopped on a big down day. And this is kind of a moment for this market to decide what it wants to do. If it doesn't hold there, probably the next area is probably 315-ish. And for me, I really believe this market could use a flush to give us better entrances and to shakes out this over bullishness that's been reigning in this market. So as of a couple minutes ago, I went and updated this. Coronavirus is now has 12,024 infected and 259 dead. And that's been the excuse for this market to sell this week. And I want to point something out. So far, no matter what you're hearing, it's contained to China. If you look outside of China, it's not spreading. If a case comes out of China, almost every case that's happened outside of China has been somebody traveling from China into that country. And every country has contained it so far. So far, this is really a China issue. The rate of infection of death to infection is still relatively low. It's mostly elderly. But that said, the market is always afraid of the unknown. It's not the known, it's the unknown. That's why the impeachment didn't bother them. They were never worried that, they never really felt that Trump was going to get actually taken out of office. Now, so markets worried about, is China hiding how bad it really is? And that's the one thing I keep hearing. Everybody's saying China lies, China doesn't tell the truth. China's actually was pretty out there. If you compare this to SARS, where they didn't talk about it forever, they were out fairly quick on this. So China has been pretty open with this so far. Maybe it is worse, but I want you to think about how many American companies have people over there, and we're not getting any kind of worse details out of there. That said, we're seeing more precautions. Delta Airlines, which was supposed to stop flights next week on the 6th, has accelerated that to today. So they're ending all flights after today. Okay. And then the other big question is what's going to happen when the China markets open for the first time after a week off on a Monday. And that has the market spooked. They're worried about a big down draw in the markets that will carry over into the rest of the global markets. And the other thing that's at play here that nobody's really talking about is earnings so far have been mostly lackluster. Guidance on a lot of names has been light. Earnings have been meh. And then you have standouts, and everybody's talking about Apple and Microsoft, Amazon. Coke had fabulous earnings as well. Nobody talks about that one. I did. But there, nobody's talking about just overall earnings have not been great so far. And that's kind of playing into this pullback here, right? We've gotten valuations extended. We could use some rest, use some refresh some of the setups. So if you're going to trade moving forward, you have to have a thesis. So my thesis is right now, we're on an election year, and the president of this country, he views his presidency and rates his presidency on how well the market performs. Every time the market hits a new all-time high, he tweets it out within minutes, right? Market all-new-time high. So he's going to continue to do whatever he has to do to pump up the markets into the election because he believes this is what's going to keep him getting reelected. Again, my thesis. This is not, this is my thoughts. The Fed still has our back. I mean, Powell, the market still hates when he speaks, right? We sold off on it. But bottom line is the Fed is still pumping. They've continued their repo operations, and they still have a kind of like quasi quantitative easing going on coming in. I truly believe this China coronavirus will be a blip, and that will be ending in a couple weeks. And really, where else are people going to put money? So that means money's going to come back into this market, and it's going to provide some fabulous opportunities. When we get that reversal, there's going to be some nice places to come in and swing, especially in some of these names that have been beaten up on this, that are just been overly beaten on the coronavirus, will probably come ripping back. So I hope this makes sense to you guys so far. So that's my thesis here. So until then, I'm waiting for the markets to find their footing. And my goal is to provide cash flow on a daily basis, right? So that's all I'm looking to do is put money in my pocket on a daily basis and waiting and keeping most of my powder dry and my emotional capital set and waiting for that moment to really go long. You need to have your shopping list. You should be saying to yourself right now, this is what I want to be looking at in the near future. Until then, again, put money in my pocket, and I'm surgical, guys. I'm in and out. I don't overstay my welcome. I throw stops in place. That's my trades for the week on the right. I had two losers. I kept them both small. My winners, I got stopped out a bunch, but I got stopped out. Once I get green, I throw a stop in place. I'm not giving anything back in this market, right? I went long most of the time. Then I went short yesterday. Yesterday, I made my money mostly short with ROKU and Tesla, and I actually traded LK and Square to the long side. But key to me is this: volume, setups, and option flow on all these trades, what got me in and out of them. And that's what I want to go over with you guys today. So you guys ready? Let's jump in. Volume. To me, volume is the biggest tell in the market. And why? It tells us better than any other study or indicator or option flow when a name is in play. Nothing speaks bigger than volume, guys. Up or down, that name is in play. That is your number one tell of a name you should be looking at every day. And that's really where I go in and I focus on. So reasons for volume. News. Example, yesterday, new CEO from IBM, right? Earnings. Last week was the busiest earnings week of the quarter. Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, AMD, just a handful of names, right, that reported last week. Some of the big names that everybody was focused on. So last week, the biggest week. So earnings provide volume. Money rotating in or playing there, right? We saw that last week in WOKU and Zoom. Both of those came roaring back last week. Didn't care what the market was doing. Zoom closed on highs of the day yesterday. And then you follow volume and trade where the money is trading. That's what I always like to say. Provides longs in a weak market. If you're not great at shorting, and I'm not the best short in the world, I tend to be a nervous short. I'll be the first one to tell you. If I'm always looking for longs. Yesterday, I thought we should go up after Amazon's earnings. We didn't. So I switched gears, got short real quick with Tesla and Roku, and then I looked for where volume was coming into names and playing strong. And the LK and both Square provided me those opportunities. Zoom provided opportunity. I didn't play it. Bottom line is volume will tell you names that are still in play. And as long as names are still going up, this market is not capitulating. Eventually, when you get a real sell-off, everything capitulates. We're not seeing that yet. So here's a great example for you guys. IBM yesterday, and this is a 5-minute chart versus a daily chart. If you guys have questions, ask them. I'll answer them as they come along if I see them. Yesterday we had the move, right? You can see the opening move here on the 5-minute chart, and look at the volume on the 5-minute chart. Those two red arrows. The one on the left was the previous day, and look at the size of the volume on the first 5-minute candle on the right. And it went down, and it held, and it started holding. And look at the volume coming in all day long higher than the previous day's volume. That gave you an indication that if you wanted to play to the long side, you could buy the dips on this name and give it a try. So that was something you could have looked at there. Look at the volume on the daily chart on the right. The volume was higher than their earnings day. We don't see that very often in this market, right? So this was telling you this name's in play, and this should also be telling you that this name is now in play moving forward here. So when you think about names you may want to take a shot on as we move forward next week, this is a name that should be back in play. Earnings were good. I know it sold it off because of the market, and IBM always does this. But this type of news, a new CEO, the old one was not getting the job done. Go look at a 5-year chart. That thing is straight down. This is possibly a game-changing move for IBM. Square, love Square. I've been in Square. I traded this thing every day in the last week, the last 5 or 6 days. I've been long it since down in the 50s. Sorry, 68. Sorry, 68. I got long it. And what told me that this name was in play? Look at the difference in volume. While this thing was going sideways here, intraday, not doing a whole heck of a lot, right? All of a sudden it woke up. And when it woke up on a big, big way. Right? Look at the volume on those 1, 2, 3, 4 up days, right? Big, big volume. Thursday came back, big volume. Even yesterday, still elevated here, right? So Square, that volume on the daily chart telling. What was most interesting to me, we're going to go over this, was on Monday's candle. Monday's candle on that big red open, they came screaming for that thing right off the bat. They didn't waste time. That thing had one of the biggest 5-minute engulfing candles you're ever going to see. So again, look at the volume profile on this. Roku yesterday. Look at the 5-minute volume on this name. This name we're going to go over in more detail later, but look what happened. Look at the selling volume that came into this name compared to normal. I put a blue line in there. Look at the average, the average volume on this thing, and it's pretty much above average all day long. So this name finally got dumped. There was news. News came out afterwards. It was hard to find, but that Fox had dumped their Roku app. Roku had dumped the Fox app going into the Super Bowl because they couldn't re-agree to terms. This is a name that's been on my watch list for a break to the upper downside. The news came in late. I was chasing it, but eventually got in and made some money short. Okay? Look at the volume. Volume telling you something's going on. This name is in play. Twitter. This is an example of a trade where you should not be playing with it right now from a volume perspective. Look how low the volume, even though it's giving green days, look how low the volume is in here. They have earnings coming up next week. Volume was very, very low in this. This is an example of a name I wouldn't be playing. I wouldn't be touching it, right? There was no reason to play with this name, even though it was giving green candles in a weak market. On days when the market was weak, the volume profile was very low. It really was an indication to me that this was a name, as much as I love trading Twitter, that should not be traded, and I pretty much ignored it with that type of volume. So learning when to take a trade and when not to take a trade based on volume will really just help you out. Okay, it'll help you get better trades, keep your winning percentage higher, and tell you when you shouldn't be playing with a name. Most importantly, don't just take a name because you like it. So volume is a great tool. Big volume in a name is in play. If you miss the opening salvo, you can buy the dips in that direction. I didn't catch that opening short on Roku yesterday, but I got in on the first bounce, right? So if you're going long on a name and it bounces, it gets a big move on the open the first 15 minutes, see if it dips. If it dips back down and holds about half of that candle, the previous candles, or hits into something like VWAP, it's perfectly worth a try off of that to take it back up to the long side. So even if a name is strong and it has no volume, I generally avoid it. Last week, Ulta and Costco had a couple days where they were bouncing, but the volume was anemic. I didn't take them. I liked the charts, I liked the setup, but I avoided them. When there's no volume, to me, there's no real buying or selling. It's just somebody coming in and some people playing games. Daily candles often show you how it compares to the average. What you really like to see, if you could look at a name and you see 30% or more of that daily volume in the first hour, you know that name is probably going to be in play for the rest of the day and that you can just sit there and buy the dips. So for me, volume is perfect. On an intraday basis, I use the intraday charts for quick confirmation. The 5-minute is the fastest but least accurate. So sometimes, especially after a 2 or 3 day move, that opening candle, that 5-minute, they look to spike it, get retail, that would be us, right? Retail investors to chase, and then they're selling into that, and you see the stock come down, never to get back close to that high. So it's often best to wait for that initial 5-minute candle to close and see how it reacts, or wait for it to take out that opening candle 5-minute range. The 15 and 30-minute charts give you a cleaner picture on volume, gives you a little bit more time to look at it, and then really decide if this name's in play. So that's basically how I look at volume on a daily basis. Any questions so far? I'm not sure I could actually see the questions, so I guess David or you guys could point them out to me. That'd be great.
Yeah, no questions so far.
Thank you. So the next area I want to talk to you guys is about setups. Setups is looking for technical setups that may be in play. And for me, this is a big part of what I do on a weekly basis. Part of trading is to do your homework. And what that means is you have to, take the time, do your research, do your homework, know what's going on in the markets, know what's going on in the names you want to play, and also look at charts and decide how this name is behaving and where is it at. So for me, every Sunday I pour through charts, looking for names that look good, names that look bad, or names that are just out of play. And, basically come up with names I want to write. And I put them down, and I start writing them out, and I make notes on names that I want to trade that week and names that are out of play. And then obviously I'm looking at what type of events may be coming up for that week. And obviously that can change things really, really quickly. So for example, earnings dates, right? Like WYNN has earnings this week. So we know that that name is going to be in play this week, which means, something to keep an eye on. Earnings, do we have events? Sometimes there's a conference, sometimes there's an investor day, sometimes there's an analyst day. What's going on overall? Do we have a market event coming up like the Fed Day, FOMC? What else is going on in the markets? Are we selling off? What are the markets doing, right? That bases my preconception to whether I want to be long or short on a name, right? If the markets are selling off and I find a name coming into support, I'm going to watch it. But if the market can't bounce, chances are that name's not going to bounce. So I'm going to be more careful. So just, like yesterday, it was straight down all day long, and the markets, for the most part, never giving us a really good bounce. That had me playing only names that had big volume. But once you have names in your pocket each week, it gives you a watch list to start working with, and you adjust it as the week goes on. And that's really the most important thing, is to be flexible and adjust it, and just, be aware things are going to come out of left field that you didn't have in your radar and give you opportunities, especially if you're listening to somebody like me or somebody else out there who you follow, who's quick and is very quick at picking up on this stuff and getting it out. On a morning basis, I did the same thing. I poured through the news, what's been upgraded, what's been downgraded, have been price target increases, earnings in the morning or from the previous nights, how are these names reacting, what events do we have going on today. I look for names that are poised, and I start to put together a list of names I like and names I'm going to focus on based upon how they traded yesterday, how they closed, option flow that came in the previous day, and events going on that day or news of that morning that may provide a catalyst for that name to move. The other thing I'll be looking at is, did we pull back and hold a key moving average like the 8-day or the 21-day or 200-day? Are we close to one? Should I be watching for a tag of one and see what it does? So on a daily basis, I'm taking the time, I'm going through this, I'm putting this together, and every day I'm coming up with my idea, my thesis, what I want to trade, knowing that I'm going to be flexible and knowing I'm not going to force a trade just because I thought this is in play. I'm going to let the name show me that it can be traded. Let it prove it to me. So lastly, where are my market sentiment indicators? And every day I go through 4 or 5 indicators on sentiment, looking to see what's going on, what's not going on in the market, how I feel about something, how I don't feel about something. Is the market too bullish? If the market's too bulled up, I'm not taking any long trades. If the market is too beared up, I'm looking to put on risk if we get a reversal, right? Typically when a market gets too much one way or the other, we tend to get that kind of reversal in it. And if the market is neutral, I'm generally looking to play things to the long side, and we'll keep moving things to the long side. So one of the examples of an indicator I look at on a daily basis, not daily when it's in play, but weekly, is the HYG. These are the high yield corporate junk bonds. And, I told my subscribers, this is a little hint to you guys, this is often the canary in the coal mine. What that means is if the coal miners used to keep canaries in, to tell them when there was a buildup of toxic gas because they would react faster, they're more sensitive to it. Well, the HYG is almost always the first thing to go before a market comes in. And if you see what started happening here on this, you can see back into January here, it started to pull before the market. And look how much further down it went before the market came in. So you see a big, big difference here between this and the market. And then you saw this wild whippy action. So this is one thing I'll be watching. If this starts to give the all clear signal, move back up, typically the market is going to follow. So, having your sentiment indicators, things to look at, give you an idea of how you should feel about the market, and should you be trading long side, short side, or quite frankly, guys, there's times just to sit on your hands. I tell everybody all the time, cash is a position. If you're not sure how to trade or what you like, don't do anything. You don't have to make money every day. There's going to be better setups. Wait for them. When you see the ones you like, pounce. So, setups that really triggered and worked in the last week or so. This is Walmart. I didn't pay attention to this. I missed on this on Sunday. And the reason I did is I did my chart. I looked at that down candle and I ignored that it was close to the 200-day. Well, we gapped down hard on Monday. Look what it did. First touch the 200-day in a long time. Look at the volume and look at the move it gave off of that, right? You don't get a candle. Look at these candles in Walmart. Other than earnings, you almost never get that type of candle in that, right? And it even gave you a little follow through to the next day, showing you, by the way, that the 21-day is resistance, and it has been since it lost it all the way up here. But that was a setup you could have watched. Tag of a big time moving average that it has not touched for a long time. That first tag is almost always an explosive move off of it. They're going to defend it. Usually a lot of institutions set up buys on the 200-day, right, for names they like. So here you go. Here's another one, Zoom. I missed on this week. I just wasn't paying attention to it. But look at this beautiful move over the last 4 days. And what did it do? It came in just to almost the 50-day and it bounced. Look at the volume yesterday pick up, closed on the highs. Right? This is a name, you guys, you want to be looking for stuff like this, looking at the setups. What makes Zoom so attractive is how much this name respects the 50-day. You can see every time it comes into it from below or from above, it generally tries to hold it or bounce off of it, or if it hits it, it's resistance. So Zoom very much respects the 50-day, and this was the first retest area of it since we broke above it back about a month ago. That's a pretty bullish sign. So this is a name at this point, hasn't had earnings yet, but if the markets go, I'd be looking at this one this week, right? See if it can take out 78, Remember, this name was up higher at one point. One thing I do like about this company is they are the only profitable of the IPOs that came out recently. And we're using their software here, which is kind of cool too. Here's another setup. This is from my 2020 names that can outperform. And this one started to go before the end of the year, but this one's been a beautiful move. Came up and tested this big gap. And last Friday, which I played, that gap up, it gave a nice trade into it, pulled back, right? And closed just barely inside that gap saying, hey, I might be ready to go. Okay, now I'm long-term shares from down lower. And I've been trading around that position every day, adding and pulling, selling off and taking it. What it did on Monday is it gapped down, and then look at that explosive move right back up into the gap, came in, same area, closed right on the edge, and then Tuesday it was off to the races. Look at that move in there. Gave you Tuesday, Wednesday, and a nice move. Thursday in the market week, it came back, and even yesterday, it held the top part of this range. It gave another inside day. It has a gap to fill almost all the way up to the 81 area. This name is telling you that it is in play, that if the market remains strong, this name is likely to try to go finish filling this gap on a bounce. The market bounces. And if you like it, I would try it off the 73 area, the 8-day on the first dip to there. So, again, this is about having setups, having a game plan. This plan I decided on Sunday was the name I was going to focus on this week. And I traded this thing hard and heavy all week. Made nice money off of it, right? Whether with options or a common stock, whatever you like. And I'm still long it from back in the 68s in my, for a long-term trade. Plan on selling most of it probably up in the 80 area. Okay, Netflix. This name is one of the toughest names to trade, but when it's in play, this thing gets violent, big moves. And after earnings, everybody came out, they upgraded this name, and then it was sitting down here and it bounced right off the 200-day, right? And look at the green line, that 200-day moving average, the green line. Look at how it was dancing on this through the entire pre-run into earnings, came into it. That next day, flow came screaming in. You saw the move, took out the previous day's high, and it was off to the races, and it gave a nice day-and-a-half trade. I traded this thing 3 or 4 times in that day and a half. The last one I tried, I took a loss on it because I thought it could go one more time and finish filling this gap. It never did. Since then, I haven't touched it. And the reason I haven't touched it is because look at the chop. The name is stuck here. You can see it has a resistance zone and it has a buy zone on it right now. And look at the difference in volume. Those couple days, look at the volume profile versus here, right? It's gone back to either average or below average volume. Deborah, that is a great point. I noticed that too, right? Netflix, despite all the weakness on yesterday, for whatever reason held in, and I would have bet you that it would have been the weaker name. Does that make sense? Because of how it had been trading all week? I would have bet that would have dropped. I was actually watching it for a short, and it never gave a reason. So I agree. That's another name that should be on watch list there, right? It held in better yesterday, and that's a setup, right? And I do my charts on Sunday typically. I haven't looked at everything, but yes. You're 100% right. That's a great, great observation. XLE. Now, this is a very, very high risk setup going into tomorrow. But there's got a couple things going on here that we should be looking at. Energy is getting slaughtered. Why is energy getting slaughtered? Anybody know? If anybody's paying attention, I'll give you guys a quick second to answer that. Supply, Walter, right? But really specifically, it's China, right? China's shut down. Everything's shut down. They have mass transit shut down in a lot of areas because of the virus impact, right, JR? Virus. So, getting beaten up here. Market was already oversupplied. Now it's oversupplied even worse. So you got this violent move down. And look at where it's come. It's come into this long-term support for the last year or so into this area. And what I also notice is RSI is really oversold, and it might be hard to see here, but if you look carefully, look at the volume on Friday. Look how big that candle was. That red candle was the largest volume candle we've seen since through August. Doesn't that look like capitulation volume, right? that looks like everybody that wanted to get out got out, right? Everybody ran for the doors, and there's your capitulation. So you have capitulation into support. Notice how it pulled back up and closed on it, right? You have oversold on RSI, and you're very, very extended short term off the moving averages, like the 8-day EMA, and you're out of the Bollinger Band. So again, I'm not talking about a trade to fall in love with. I'm talking about make money, get in, get out, put some money in your pocket, grab some calls, whatever it is, play your favorite name, and put some money in your pocket, and then see where it wants to go. I do think when China clears up, there is a trade to be had in energy products once we get a better to an all clear, but it's not here yet. And this is another one for next week. Now, what do you Deborah, to your point, notice how WYNN closed yesterday. Look at the last 2 days in WYNN, how strong it's been. WYNN's another name, beaten to death by what's going on with the virus. And MACAU is a ghost town, right? Nobody wants to go to a casino and potentially get sick. So this got two catalysts this week. Earnings, and the MACAU numbers come out on Sunday night into Monday morning. So this name should be on everybody's watch list. It has a big gap above here that it can rage into and go fill all the way up to 132-ish. It has another gap above there. This is a name that could come roaring back on some good news, especially off of earnings. So again, it's about looking at setups, identifying setups for the week that are in a nice area. Another thing you like about this name, it came down and is holding here on this 100-day moving average. That's that white line for me. It continues to come in there and hold. That's a good sign. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days in a row. It's showing you that they're supporting it there. Yep, it is, but it hasn't been this oversold and this extended with the capitulation volume, Sherry. Right? You have a lot more coming together here on the XLE. Here's another one for you to be watching next week. ROKU does not have earnings next week. It capitulated. You had this wedge setup that finally broke to the downside. I love trading this name because this name gives wild moves. For the last week, I haven't traded it much because it was choppy, it was whippy, it was in this wedge, that was ascending wedge. I was hoping it was going to be a descending wedge that broke to the upside, but I also thought for weeks that the 200-day is in play. The 200-day has been moving up. Your first test is very likely to come here on Monday morning at 118.60, like Walmart. If the market's not selling off and it hits that, it's likely to get a powerful, at least 1 day bounce off of that. There's probably a lot of funds that'll come in and they want to buy it off of there because they don't, they want to own more of it and they didn't want to buy it up in the highs. So another setup, guys, that you can sit here, you can take a look at and say, is this something I like? I can watch for it. I could see if it does, see how it trades, see what the markets are doing. So bottom line is you got to do your homework and your research. You got to take that time and do it. Make sure you know what names have earnings. Make sure you know what events are coming up for the week, and see where you are. What do you mean by buy cheap? ROKU? Yeah, well, it's a heck of a lot cheaper when it was up at $178 a share. So, they'd rather buy it down here at the 117, 118 area than 178, right? Still has earnings coming. Find charts you like and ones you want to avoid. Charts that are play, just go over them. If there's no good setup there, don't waste your time with it. Move on to the next ones. Look for the ones that are there. Find the names you like. Develop lists of names you like to trade. Go-to names you know how they trade. That's what I like to do. I love trading names like Square and ROKU and AMD. I'm always looking at those on a daily basis. Every morning, you got to get prepared. For me, I get up, I start posting to my subs at 6 o'clock. I go, you see me posting to you guys publicly on Twitter at 6 o'clock. What's going on? What's the news? What's kind of upgrades and downgrades? I shoot a setup video. By 8 o'clock every morning, it's out so people can be prepped, and I go live in my room at 9. So it's about being prepared. It's about having that information and having the ideas of what you want to trade on a daily basis. Right or wrong, you need to always have a list of names you're looking at, things that look good to you, and then wait for them to trigger. That's my number one thing. Everything we talk about here today, things have to trigger. And you have to be patient sometimes and wait for the trigger. And when you have a market like this, I'm more patient. And that means instead of taking a trade right out of the gate, I'll wait at least 5 minutes sometimes. Sometimes I'll even wait 15 minutes because I'm so unsure of what this market wants to do. Patience. If you have a setup you like and you miss the opening salvo, patience. One thing I found about this market, it gives trades every day. You don't have to get the opening one. If you wait, there's something that comes along. There's always something that comes along. You just have to keep your eyes open and watch for it, and eventually it'll show itself. Okay, option flow. I call this the cherry on top. So when I'm looking at everything on a daily basis and a weekly basis, option flow used to be the be all give all thing for me. Now it's kind of like I look at volume and setups, and then option flow is next, because option flow is real time. Option flow is really my barometer during the day to show me what's going on. So what I like about flow is it shows us leverage bets or protection funds and institutions are making on the markets, as well as individual stocks. Again, think about what I'm saying here. Leverage bets, puts and calls. They're leverage bets, or they're protection, or they're doing protection on the market, or they're buying, trying to get more exposure, right? That's what they use options for in this market. For the overall stock market itself, I find them to be a very, very strong indicator of sentiment. We look at the put to call ratings on the everyday. I have a magic formula I use to tell if there's too bullish or too bearish. I look at the overall flow on the indexes throughout the day, telling me what the market's thinking. So for example, on Wednesday, we saw massive amounts of protection into the indexes like we haven't seen in a long time. Wednesday, we started to get weak. We came back Thursday. They stuck with it. And yesterday, we finally capitulated. Yesterday, for the first time in a long time, I saw a tremendous amount of flow onto the VIX products, not the VIX, the VIX type products, UVXY, VXX, VIXY, telling me that these things are maybe coming back into play, because as so far, the VIX really has been showing no fear, right? Something to learn about option flow. It has to be interpreted. If you don't know how to do it, get somebody like me or somebody else out there who does and subscribe to them. Sometimes unusual buying way out of the money works great. Other times it's very likely, especially in a market like this, that it's a stock, it's a fund that is dumping stock and replacing it with cheap calls. You see this all the time. They get people to chase and they're dumping into it. Or they're selling these calls against their stock position, taking in premium in case there's a move down, basically saying, I don't think this stock's going to go anywhere over the next X time period, and I'm going to sell the calls and take the risk that my stock gets called away from me. And usually that's kind of a bearish symbol. Either way, option flows tells you a lot about what's going on in the market and individual names, and provides that additional catalyst. For me personally, I tend to focus on momentum flow. I used to be a big player of unusual options. I don't find they work as well anymore. I find the momentum flow works. Small, constant sweeps into names, and it just keeps going up. And, caveat here, I don't like flow into names that can be easily manipulated. A lot of people like to play FireEye. That name is very easy manipulated, right? That doesn't have to be a big fund. Sometimes that's just a chat room pumping it, and they're trying to get everybody to chase. And there's a lot of people out there that do that, guys. You ever notice how you see all this flow sometimes during the early morning, and then the name just never goes anywhere, it falls apart, and nothing happens with it? That's because there's a lot of rooms out there that are getting people to all buy these options early, and they're selling as you guys are going out, or especially when it's getting pumped on halftime on CNBC. So I prefer to go after names that are bigger, like AMD and Apple and Facebook and Micron, et cetera, looking for momentum flow into those, ROKU, Square, because they're not as easy manipulated, right? They're not really these pump rooms, these pumper guys, they can't manipulate these names as easily. Option flow is often very, very good indicator after news, right? If you have a news event and you saw some buying coming into it, somebody always knows, right? Somebody always gets the news first. But if they keep coming after the news is out, that's usually a good sign that buying is coming in, and that may get me involved in the news. Again, this all has to be interpreted. Learning that takes time. It took me, I've been doing this now for about 10 years to really, it took me about 6 or 7 years before I really started getting very good at this. And now I really feel like I'm on top of my game. We all make mistakes. It's always open to interpretation, but for me, it's about trying to figure out the best flow, what I should be trading, or what I should be using on a daily basis. One sec. So yesterday, this was KKR. They had earnings yesterday, and the call was going on, and I saw this volume spike. I quickly switched over to it, and then some flow started coming in. Now, they're all weeklies, but you can see that 3,450, the weekly 3150s came screaming in on the call, and it came in right about the midpoint of that candle, and you can see it gave another dollar move. So you could have played this with options or stock. And then the news came out that on the call, they said they were in discussions to join the Russell 2000. So, flow like that, when you catch it, when you see a move and they keep coming for it, that's what I'm talking about when you see an event, say something's tradable. Whatever was going on in that conference call at that time, obviously it was tradable. It dipped, it came down, it held, and it closed on the highs. Bottom line, if I had traded this, I would have been in and out of this like a surgical within 5 or 7 minutes in those first two green candles. And I would have been moving my stop up the entire time. And that's one thing I really got to tell you guys. Once I get nicely green, I throw my stop into the money, and then I start moving my stop up, 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 up until they get me. And even if they get me, I don't care, because if they get me, it makes money. And that's all I'm trying to do, is make sure I make money and protect myself from big losses in this market. Tesla yesterday. Another name on everybody's radar. Tesla didn't care yesterday, did it? I shorted it in that big down candle because of a put buyer coming in, made nice money, got out right on the low area, was the right move, and then right where I put that candle, this little guy came in. Yesterday, suicides, right? Yesterday, 650 calls, 294 of them. Boom. Look at that explosive move off that guy, right? Guy went out, you got a nice move from roughly 636. He got this thing all the way up to 645. You got a $7 move on those options really quick. Watching for this, watching for little stuff like that, little indications like that, that if you want to play long, play long. A bunch of my subs went in on that one. Again, don't overstay your welcome. Get in, get out. Got in, put a double top in, double top, get out. Put a stop in place, right? Even though it closed on the highs, those options didn't pay very well near the end of the day. Eventually, it crossed above that strike. So again, watching for little pieces of flow like that. There was more of it in the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes yesterday before the name took off again. So it's watching for moves like that, watching for that little bit of flow that comes in, and it just gives you that edge or a reason to give something a try. And really, that's part of what we're talking about, guys, is looking for an edge, looking for a reason to take something, looking for reasons. AMD earnings. Earnings were pretty good. They guided down for the first quarter. The big red flag for me on AMD was I was very disappointed in their data center sales. I thought that would have been strong. I was surprised that they were losing back out to Intel on that, but that's okay. But here's what's to note. On that down move the day after earnings, where we held the bottom of the Bollinger Band, look at the flow that came in. Next week's 46 calls and 45 calls. These were in the money call buyers of size coming in. Opening, opening, opening. These are new. When you see opening, we know that this guy wasn't there before. We know there's nothing there. So that was my clue that on the next day that it would be in play. We gap down, look at that powerful move on AMD the next day, right? Right up into that, filled into that gap. Unfortunately, I was looking for this for a long yesterday. It didn't give a day two. It gapped down and never gave a reason to get back involved in it yesterday. Still an inside day. Still has that little gap above here. We'll see how it handles this area right now. Right. So again, option flow told me on Thursday that big guys were playing with this. Guys were coming in, look at the size of those bets, and they were playing at it. Right. So something to look for, something to keep an eye on going into next week. FCX, tough name. And well, Bill, if it's greater than open interest, it's opening, right? Does that make sense? So if you look at open interest on a name, how can I tell if option transaction is opening? If it's greater than open interest, if volume is greater than open interest, it's opening. And then I check open interest on this stuff the next day. So you go on my Twitter feed, you'll see me post every day open interest changes on names that on specific names we always play or names I'm looking at to see if it's stuck, right? Make sure that flow stood. It wasn't somebody trade in and out. So that's part of what I do every morning for my subs. Make sense? Okay, so FCX, tough name. Like this name long term. It trades off of copper. Copper getting beaten up again because of what's going on in China. Okay, what happened this week? Look at some of the buyers that started stepping into this. May 13 calls, 6,500, right? You got the April 12 calls they started coming after. The February 1150s, then next week's 1150 calls. What I like about the flow here is it's coming into the 200-day where it's held now for the last week. It is a tough name. I'm not in it. I didn't take it. I like, those who bought my, here's my hint. This is one of my 2020 outperform names. It's already outperformed where I thought it would go. My next target's up here at 14. I'm watching it closely here for a long-term buy, Walter. But we need China to, kind of signal that all clear, right? But for me, the buying coming in is interesting. I wish that the May calls were a little closer. I don't like them being up that 13 area. I would have preferred them down at the 12. But all the additional buying's got my attention level. So I'm watching this one. If it comes through here, my next level to buy would be 950. But this is how I use this and setups, put them together. So from these examples, monitoring option flow, you can see where momentum came in, right? And that's what we're looking for. When I'm looking for a quick trade during the day, momentum coming into Tesla, long or short, came into KKR. Then you saw the bigger dip buying in names like AMD and FCX. This is things I look for. You look for the setups, you look how this sets up with the option flow, and it tells you where you should be trading. It helps give you another piece. It gives you another edge. That's what we're looking for, edges, right? What we do, we take risk. We take risk to make money. We know not every trade's going to work. We're looking for reasons to get in and have an edge, and that's what today is all about that I'm trying to show you guys on how I trade. I'm not a huge fan of big out-of-the-money call buying or put buying, or non-standard strikes. The bigger players generally play monthly option terms unless they're looking at a specific event. So when you see all these non-standard monthly strikes, like buying in the Feb 14th calls, it's Valentine's Day. It's weird, right? The February expiration is the following week on the 21st. I'm not a huge fan of that. I like to see closer to the money buying. In the money buying is great. That's showing somebody is putting a lot of money at risk as well. So we watch that. Not too far in the money or stock replacement. Option flow has changed. It used to be a dead on indicator for me. It used to be something I would follow every unusual trade, and it worked for years. In the last year and a half, 2 years, it's really that unusual stuff is not working as much. It's now you got to find the stuff and cherry pick, and it really is the cherry on top when all these things come together, right? Because it really shows you if you have volume, you have a nice setup, and then you see option flow coming on top of it, that just puts it over the top, guys. And that, like those three things, forget buying indicators, forget going out and spending tremendous amounts of money on somebody's indicators and stuff. When you have those three things come together, you have the formula for a very winning trade. And I cannot stress that to you guys enough. So in summary, to me, volume is king. That is the most important thing out there. I'm always looking for volume. I'm looking for where it's going, looking for how it's going to play out. Often intraday dips and names that have volume can be bought, or intraday bounces. So if you're shorting a name and it bounces and has big volume like ROKU, there was a setup to get back in. If you're long a name yesterday like IBM and it dips and the volume stays up, chances are there's a long back off of it as it sets back up. So it's learning these setups, and then if you see option flow keep coming for it, yesterday they kept coming from IBM, it's telling you that they're still playing with the name, that they're still showing an interest in it. Setups tell me where the volume may be coming in and into a name, and what names I should have on watch for that week or on that day. And again, it's doing your homework or following somebody who you like who's doing the homework for you if you don't have the time to do it. But this is going to give you that edge, and that's really what it is. Not everything's going to work out. Not everything's going to trigger, but you got to go in every day with some type of idea. If you just show up and say, I'm here and I don't know what's going on, you're asking for trouble. You got to put that time in. You got to do that homework. Option flow adds to the top, over the top momentum, and really that's the last indicator I look at. I used to take tons of trades based upon option flow. I only take option flows when I see there's volume in the name and the setup looks good these days. And that's kind of the change that's come over me in the last year, and it's been working. It's giving me a much higher percentage of wins and, of what to do with it. So, any questions so far? What do we have? About 9 minutes left. Anything I didn't answer, questions I can go over with you? If you'd like to learn more about what I do, please go check me out at smartoptiontrading.com. It's my website on the right side. I have a trading room, private Twitter feed where I provide option flow, events, alerts, my daily videos, chart setups, trades, everything going on is delivered through there. I do a morning setups video every day, so if you're not live with me, you'll know exactly what I'm looking at, what I like. A recap video every night going over the trades, what looks good, what I don't like, or how I feel about the market. And you're always going to get my overall feel of the markets and what's going on here. And every week I do a subscriber webinar for everybody. It's about a 25 or 30-minute webinar or 40, and it's just things I can't answer during the day because we're too busy, or questions you guys may have, and it's recorded so you guys have it. I do this for $25 as a special. For the first 30 days, it's $25. Come get to know me. If you don't like it, you guys can cancel on PayPal directly. You don't even have to reach out to me and say, Mike, cancel my subscription. I give you guys control over it. I never wanted to be one of those guys where I have to track you down to get out. And it goes to $100 every month thereafter. I think I'm the best deal out there. Do I look at gaps, Gally? Yeah, I look at gaps. My whole square trade was based upon that gap, right? Was on that principle that I thought that the name would get into that gap. So this is a chart I did. This is from my 2020 names I sold to name of outperform. Square was one of the names on it. My whole reason for getting in was because of this massive, massive gap. Does that make sense, Galaxy? Right? That's what I was looking for. I was looking for it to get in there and to go fill it. I thought it might wait to earnings, but as soon as it started touching it again up here, I knew that it was going to be in play. And that dip to 68 was the buy. Make sense? I got about 5 or 7 minutes. What questions you guys have? Do you want any names you want me to take a look at for you while I'm here? You could post a couple names. I got some time from Quick Charts. Netflix. We kind of went over Netflix, right? We kind of went over Netflix here. But again, everybody loves Netflix, 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 Netflix. This name has been killing people left, right, and center for the last year. But, here it is. It went into that gap. When it went into that gap, there was 2 days of trades here, right? Now it's kind of sitting here, doesn't know what it wants to do. But in a weak market, somebody pointed out it's holding the 8-day moving average. It held in strong yesterday. If this gets back up above roughly, anything over 350, I think this thing will try to go again. And it's got that gap to finish filling. It's up to around 361. I'll take an $11 trade, right? Grab a couple options and see if it can work. So I'd keep an eye on this one if the market stays strong. What else did you guys? Microsoft. Walter, Microsoft, yesterday was the first day we kind of saw a little bit of momentum come out of this name. That was one hell of a great report. I loved it. I don't think this name is done. Let it come in. It came right into that earnings gap. It couldn't hold it. Maybe it wants to come down, test 168.40 and holds. It holds the 8-day, would make a nice entrance. Apple went all the way to the 21-day. What they're doing is they're doing great, but it's run forever. This thing needs a rest. I would prefer to see it come in a little bit, but we'll see. What else did you guys post? Netflix. Shop. This was on my list for yesterday. It never triggered. I thought with Amazon's move it would. That said, another name, while it closed on the lows, still holding my 8-day EMA. Earnings are coming up. I probably won't trade that one at this point until after earnings and see its reaction. Remember, this name has run a long way. Names like this, the points get due for some type of sell-off, so you got to be careful. That said, it's been strong, so dips have been buyable. Amazon. Daniel, Amazon's back in play. This name has been one of the most frustrating names in the markets for the last year. I would have bet you after this, December 26th move where we all made money on it, that this thing would take off and start going. Instead, this thing chopped around and did nothing going into earnings. And then you get a $250 move on earnings day. And here we are. And it pulled back yesterday, but it still held most of it. This name is in play to the long side. This would be one of the first names, Daniel, I'd be looking at after that report on when this weakness is over, right? It's also my 2020 names that could outperform. So I'd be watching that carefully. Like the move here. Hard to find a setup now because it's so extended, right? So where could it pull to? If the market was weak and it filled half this gap and held, that would be a good area. If it actually held the bottom of this gap and never violated, that would be outstanding, in my opinion. Beyond Meat, fake meat. Guys, fake meat, this name just trades on news. I don't like this name. It trades on news. It was dead down here. Now it's woken back up on volume, but not holding in well. There are signs that sales are slumping badly across a lot of the places they're at. I'd be very careful with this name. I actually think you lose this area here. This name could be another short. If it loses this area, it could go right back down and will take you this whole move back. Very, very careful with that name here. Booking, I don't trade it. I don't trade that name, Daniel. It's too big. It's not enough volume on a daily basis for me, and it's too whippy. It's getting beat up on China. I'd rather trade Expedia or possibly Trip off of it. But, this is a name to watch. It has earnings coming, but because of nobody's traveling, it's getting beaten up. So when everything gets the all clear, this is a name. If you like it, Daniel, I'd look at it. Overall in the SPY, guys, I don't know where we go on Monday. My gut says we need a bigger dip. I showed you that we could move all the way down here to 315 would be an area where we held support. And if we don't hold there, I would look at 300-ish. That's where we broke out of and that retest. But, how we open on Monday, I can make you the case that China is overblown and we all gap up and we have a nice Monday, Tuesday before we sell off. I can make you the case that China is not over. We find some bad news. China sells off, gives us a big red flush on the open. We can buy that down around 315 area. You're going to have to kind of wait to see how things go here. And, anybody trying to tell you they know what this market's going to do here, I'm not sure. I'm going to be a heck of a lot more careful. AMAT. Earnings coming. The semis earnings, Intel was good, Lam Research was good, AMD was okay, but most names have not been so great yet. This name is a tough name to trade. I'd wait till after earnings before I touched it here, Glenn. Just not something I want to be playing with as we go this far forward. AMD we covered in the presentation. Apple, first violent move down yesterday to the 21-day. This name needs to chill. This run has been incredible. This thing has been riding the 8-day through all this. If it holds the 21-day and bounces, that's your entrance. That said, they announced here just a little while ago is they're temporarily closing all of their stores in China. So we'll see how that plays out. Coming up at a time, let's talk Crowd and TTD. I love Crowd. Crowd actually gave a nice reversal signal. Look at that hammer candle here. It took back the 21-day and gave a nice 3-day move. What's disappointing about Crowd, it was on my list for yesterday. It closed on the highs and it couldn't hold. The reason I didn't take it yesterday when it broke above the previous day's highs was the market was weak. I'd watch to see if it can hold the 8-day. I think that's a nice entrance. I traded Crowd almost daily through this run up here. When it started getting weird up in this 64 area, that's when I stopped trading. I took my first loss on it after a series of big wins. And for now, if it takes out 64, it probably goes up towards 66, and then your next area would be 69. And last one, because I got to turn it over here, TTD. This name is frustrating the living hell out of me. It looks set up coming in the last couple weeks. It's flagging, it can't go. Maybe it finds some momentum off the 50-day, but no real good feeling on it at this point. I want to thank you guys for joining me on this Saturday. David, thanks for having me on. And I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of your weekend and the big game tomorrow.
Thank you, Mike. Great presentation.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Anka.